Look, the FBI is 38,000 when we're fully manned, which we're not. In the National Capital Region, in the 50-mile radius around Washington, D.C., there were 11,000 FBI employees. That's like a third of the workforce. A third of the crime doesn't happen here. So we're taking 1,500 of those folks and moving them out. Every state's getting a plus up. And I think when we do things like that, we inspire folks in America to become intel analysts and agents and say, we want to go work at the FBI because we want to go fight violent crime and we want to get sent out into the country to do it. Mm-hmm. And that's what we're doing. In the next 3, 6, 9 months, we're going to do that hard. And, you know, I didn't know that I was going to do this, but I'm going to announce it on your show anyway. This FBI is leaving the Hoover building because this building is unsafe for our workforce, and we want the workforce.
You just gave up a big nugget there.
But we want the American men and women to know, if you're going to come work at the premier law enforcement agency in the world, we're going to give you a building that's commensurate with that. And that's not this place.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Okay, so I gotta take it back. I made a video the other day talking about Kash Patel not coming through on some of his promises because he said on day one he was going to shut down the FBI headquarters and turn it into a deep state museum. And now he's finally coming through on that promise many weeks and days late. But, you know, it is what it is. Now, does he have the authority to turn it into a deep state museum? No, I don't think so. But that would be lovely to see. I wonder what they're going to do with that building. They're probably going to condemn it and just burn it to the freaking ground. Not literally, but, you know, metaphorically, if you will, burn it to the freaking ground. Demo that thing and get it out of there, because it is a pretty old building. You know, as he said, it's unsafe. But this is a good move, folks. This really is a good move, right? You know, how often does the FBI arrest people in Washington, D.C.? So why should their headquarters be there? You know, I would put their headquarters somewhere like Detroit or San Francisco, somewhere where there's a lot of crime and they need federal law enforcement, by God. I mean, this is a good move. Kash Patel is doing things. It was good to see Dan Bongino in that interview. I didn't watch the whole interview because I was kind of busy doing my work thing, you know, setting mirrors and glass and all this other stuff. Hectic day today at work. We'll put it that way. Hectic day. But, you know, it's lovely to see what's going on. They're actually getting out, getting rid of some of these people, moving them away from where they're not needed and putting them in places where they are needed. Why hasn't this been done a long time ago? Wonder why they put their headquarters in Washington, D.C. to start with. But it's good to see this. You know, I've been reading loads of news articles. The FBI going after these predators and going after these gang members and blah, blah, blah. The stories go on and on and on. The FBI actually going after criminals instead of going after, I don't know, grandmothers that happened to show up to the Capitol on January 6th waving their little American flags around everywhere and got arrested and thrown in prison as insurrectionists, for goodness sakes, which was absurd, right? Over 1,600 people arrested for January 6th, when we know, you look at the stats and you look at the facts, it was only about 30, maybe a couple dozen, maybe 3 dozen people actually fighting with cops. And then there was almost 500 people charged with some sort of violence, you know, vandalism or whatever, right? Just utter nonsense going after all these people. Like the people that were peaceful, yes, they arrested peaceful protesters on January 6th. Over 1,000 peaceful protesters, as a matter of fact, because the numbers of arrests are at 1,600. They were still going after January 6th defendants when Joe Biden came out of office, as a matter of fact. Donald Trump came in and immediately stopped the FBI from going after new January 6th defendants, when after that we saw a wave of resignations, as a matter of fact, which is insane. These people resigned because they could not go after innocent American citizens. It's fascinating, isn't it? But let's go ahead and get into the news right quick, because we've got some Supreme Court rulings coming down the pipeline. Y'all check this out. Supreme Court rules Trump administration must give Venezuelans more time to challenge deportation under Alien Enemies Act. Now, after reading through this thing, man, I've got some opinions on this. So get ready for those, y'all. But let's get into this right fast. The Supreme Court on Friday dealt a blow against the Trump administration's attempt to send Venezuelans it says are gang members to a notorious prison in El Salvador, saying that detainees must have a proper chance to raise legal objections. Yeah, legal objections. Is that so? Like, this is something I don't get. What legal objections are there to somebody that enters the country illegally and comes into this country and then starts committing crimes? What legal argument could they possibly have that would allow them to stay in the United States? That is a rhetorical question, by the way. That wasn't a question at all. As a matter of fact, it was just a statement, because there is no legal defense for somebody that breaks into our country and then starts committing crimes as to why they should stay in this country. Now, if you want to make the argument that, hang on, if they committed a crime, then they should serve time in our prisons here. I don't see a difference between our prison and El Salvador's prison. Not as far as foreign nationals are concerned. If the Trump administration wants to send gang members to CCOT, illegal immigrants, criminal aliens to CCOT, I have no problem with that. Now, if he wants to send American citizens who are on death row or whatever, spending 200 years in prison, if he wants to send them to CCOT, yeah, we're going to have a problem with that. But I don't think the Trump administration or Donald Trump himself is actually serious about that. He's made those statements several times, but we all know that Donald Trump loves to piss off the left. And Donald Trump will say things just to antagonize the left, just to get them all riled up, just to have his name in the headlines. I think Donald Trump does that stuff on purpose. And the left, they love to take that narrative and run with it. Oh, he's an authoritarian. He wants to deport U.S. citizens. How could you vote for this guy? They tried to shame you into oblivion for voting for the popular mandate that Donald Trump has. Yeah, for positions, for actual positions, that actions Donald Trump takes that are popular with most Americans, they try to shame you into voting for that. Why would we want people deported, they say? I don't know, maybe because they're not supposed to be in the country. Why would you vote for shutting down the government? Or, like shutting down the Department of Education and firing all these employees. I don't know, maybe because the Biden administration hired way too many people and the federal government has become way too bloated. There's many, many redundant positions that are filled in the federal government that we don't need all these people working in the federal government doing all this work. Sorry. You can try to shame me into oblivion, but I look at the actions of Donald Trump. I don't look at the rhetoric of Donald Trump. And this is what Democrats should do, but they're not going to do that, folks, because they live in a delusion dream world where everything Donald Trump says is everything Donald Trump does or will do. So you should be in fear. You should live under a rock and close your ears and close your eyes so you hear no evil and see no evil. And let them fix all your woes, for goodness sakes. Right. The 7-2 decision, which grants a request made by a group of Venezuelans, clarified an unusual order issued by the justices in the early hours of April 19th that hit pause on any government plans to deport people held in northern Texas. The justices in the latest unsigned decision faulted the administration for only giving the detainees 24 hours to launch legal challenges. Under these circumstances, notice roughly 24 hours before removal, devoid of information about how to exercise due process rights to contest that removal, surely does not pass muster, the ruling says. Once again, this is based upon the fact that these people actually get some sort of due process on their way out the door. There is this thing called expedited removal, where there is no due process. If you are in the country within 2 years, you just get deported. That's it. I think the same standard should apply to alien enemies, if you will. If you're caught committing a crime and you're an illegal, immediate deportation. Unless it's some sort of really, really heinous crime or something like that where, yeah, we want justice and time served in the United States. And some people feel that way. I could care less. If Trump sends them to CCOT, what's the difference? They're still in prison, and they're going to stay there, as a matter of fact. I don't care. Some people do care. There you go. Hey, if that's the process by which you're going to argue. But the funny thing about this specifically is this is the Alien Enemies Act. So what the justices are basically saying here is that enemy combatants that that cross our national borders and come into this country should be given due process rights. They should be allowed to go to trial and argue for them to stay here. Think about that for a second. This is what they are arguing. This makes absolutely no sense. Right now, they could make the argument that, well, are they really enemy combatants? I would argue yes, because they were let out of prison from Venezuela. They traveled to the United States and started, organizing and conducting terrorism. As a matter of fact, that is what they are doing. They are gangs. These are violent criminals. Right? We've seen all the evidence we need. Tren de Aragua, they need to be rooted out of this country, just like Hamas. I see no difference between the two. If you want to say it, there's zero daylight between Hamas and Tren de Aragua. Sure, you may get some moral worldview differences, sure, but the end result differences is what we're talking about here. And the end result differences are terrorism. That's what the end result is. So I could care less about any due process rights. But that's what the justices are essentially arguing, is that people that break into our country, that circumvent the process by which you come in legally, they go around that, evade our border patrol, come into this country, and then start committing crimes and organizing in gang and conducting their activities. These people should get due process rights. Look, none of this makes any sense at all to me. None of it. Now, once again, we're not arguing somebody that wanted to come here for a better life, right? And they got a visa and they overstayed that visa. They didn't renew it or whatever. That's an illegal immigrant, right? That's somebody that maybe something happened, they had circumstances, they couldn't make it to an immigration office or whatever it may be, and their visa or their green card expired. They didn't do anything about it. That's a different situation than evading border patrol, for goodness sakes, to circumvent that process. They did not want the U.S. government to know that they was in the country. Because once again, folks, there's a vast difference between immigration and criminal aliens. An immigrant and a criminal alien. Very vast difference. An immigrant actually goes to a port of entry, or they contact a U.S. embassy abroad. They get a visa to come here, get the passports and all that. They travel to the United States, and they enter the country, and then they're taken care of like they should be. But these people, they circumvent that process. I don't think that we should give them that process on their way out. I just don't think that makes any sense, legally or logically. But the court concluded that the justices themselves, far removed from the circumstances on the ground, are not best placed to determine exactly what process should be followed. Exactly. But they're doing that. Therefore, the court sent the case back to an appeals court for further proceedings to determine what due process the detainees should receive. The litigation hinges on the Trump administration's attempt to use the Alien Enemies Act, a rarely used 18th century wartime law, to deport Venezuelans who officials allege are members of a gang called Tren de Aragua. In the ruling, the court did not weigh in on the weighty underlying question of whether the Trump administration can deport people under the Alien Enemies Act, which, once again, they're bypassing their duty. They need to just stop what they're doing. They know this is going to come back to them. They need to go ahead and make a determination based upon the merits of Donald Trump using the Alien Enemies Act, for crying out loud, because this has just been bouncing around from Supreme Court to the federal court, the lower courts, to appellate courts. It's just been boom after boom after boom after boom, just going all over the place. And once again, they are not trying to do their job here. They don't want to be tied down, because I think, in my personal opinion, they know, based upon the merits, that they're going to have to allow Donald Trump to use the Alien Enemies Act, because if they don't, then in the future, if we are ever invaded, they're going to have to give foreign invaders due process rights, which is an absurdity, instead of just deporting these people. It's insane. To be clear, we decide today only that the detainees are entitled to more notice than was given on April 18th, the court ruling said. Two conservative justices, Samuel Alito and Clarence Thomas, dissented. Alito wrote in a dissenting opinion that there was no grounds for the court to get involved at such an early stage of the litigation. The court, Alito said, had no authority to issue any relief. The Trump administration's attempt to summarily deport immigrants without giving them a chance to contest whether they are gang members or whether the law can even be applied to criminal organizations is part of its hardline immigration policy that has faced considerable pushback from courts as well as political opponents. Now, that was kind of set up to make you believe that that's what Alito said, but it's not. That was the corporate press. And once again, that's a lie, because these people aren't immigrants. Although the Alien Enemies Act can only be used at a time of invasions or predatory incursions, the government has argued that those conditions are met because the gang is effectively an arm of the Venezuelan government, a claim that is heavily contested. No, they are not saying that at all. They are saying that Venezuela let them out of prison, and then they proceeded to come to the United States. All because Nicolas Maduro wants to cause chaos in capitalist nations. They didn't only come to the United States, by the way. They've gone to many different countries, causing chaos, wreaking havoc all over the place. I would call that complicit. They're not an arm of the Venezuelan government. But does that matter? Like, does it matter? An organized militia, that's essentially what they are. Their organized terrorist organization has come from Venezuela. That is a predatory incursion. They are preying upon American citizens. And there are activist judges in this country that want to keep these people here, that actually try to free these people and let them back out into the wild, as we saw with that Wisconsin judge that was arrested for allowing a gang member out of her court. And another judge that was caught harboring, renting out his building behind his house to a Trinidad Aragua member. It is insane what Democrats are doing in this country. The court's April order, coming just hours after a bus carrying Venezuelans left a detention center in Texas toward an airport, but then turned around, put the entire case on hold while the justices figured out what next steps to take. The Supreme Court had, in an April 7th decision, made it clear that any people the government wants to deport under the Alien Enemies Act need to be given the chance to challenge the decision via habeas corpus petitions. Once again, folks, that is insane to me, because that is telling these people, these gang members, these terrorist members, that we are going to give you the right to contest your deportation. That means you get the right judge in the right circuit, in the right district, that would allow a Trinidad Aragua member right back into the country. That's what that means, folks. That is insane to me. That is a gross negligence for the safety of Americans in this country. It's gross negligence. There are several different Alien Enemies Act cases being litigated around the country. It raises different issues, from the case involving Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the man the government mistakenly deported to El Salvador, sparking another debate about due process rights. Right. Should they get due process rights? Should somebody that intentionally evaded due process for entry into this country, should they be given due process for egressing this country? Right? You got ingress, you got egress. They circumvented ingress, and now they're wanting to force the administration to give them due process for their egress rights. In other words, They want to have the option for these people to stay here. It is blowing my freaking mind that the corporate press and Democrats get on the side of criminals. It just really, really blows my mind that they don't care about your safety at all. Somebody please make an argument as to Democrats caring about the safety and security of America, our borders, our citizens, all of that. Please. Because to me, it sounds like deranged lunatics want anarchy all across, like not just anarchy, anarcho-terrorism. That's what they seem to want. Because if the Trump administration wants to deport terrorists, Democrats have to oppose that and say, no, we want terrorists in the country. And they're not arguing for these people to serve time here. This is for these people because a lot of these people haven't been accused of crimes except entering the country illegally. So for the most part, if these people go to immigration court, right, and a judge says, no, we think they have the right to stay here, they will be released into the country. It's insane. Or they'll serve 6 months or whatever it is for crossing our border illegally. Get a Democrat as the president, as we had with Joe Biden, and they just open the freaking floodgates and allow these people to flow in. And then the end result of that? Yet you got entire apartment complexes terrorized by Tren de Aragua because the Biden administration wants that to happen. That's the only conclusion I can derive. The Biden administration wanted anarcho-terrorism. It's insane to me, but I'm rambling at this point, so y'all let me know what y'all think about all this. Y'all don't forget to smash that like button for me, and subscribe if you're new around here and you want to stay up to date with actual news and my opinion, because I do have to give my opinion, obviously. But if y'all want to stay up to date and get all the facts that come with these news articles, y'all make sure and subscribe. Do me a big favor, a good way to help me out, because we need to push back against all this. We cannot just sit idly by and not voice our opinions. So y'all do me a favor and click that join button. Sign up, become a member, and be a participant in the news. Get out there, voice your opinion about this. Let people know that this is insane. We need to shame Democrats for their opinions on this. Need to shame them for not thinking about your safety. It's just blows my mind. But once again, y'all share this video anywhere and everywhere you can. Let me know what you think about all this down in the comment section. And y'all try to have a good day. Stay legitical. Peace.